Well, that completes the discussion of the consumer's behavior, and now we will turn to what the firm is doing. So we have a representative firm, and this firm is going to use inputs, capital and labor, and combine those to produce goods today and to produce goods in the future. Now, what we're doing here is really kind of combining the dynamics that come from investment in the Solow model with the static labor choice that firms made in the very first model that we looked at. So the firm is going to realize that if it invests more today, then it'll have more capital in the future and be able to produce more in the future. The firm's going to have two different production functions. One is to produce goods today, and they're going to inherit this original level of capital from the past, and they're going to choose their demand for labor. Of course, there's going to be a total factor productivity shock that hits this production function. And then their choice of investment today is going to feed into how much capital they have in the future. They combine that capital then with their demand for labor in the future and with the total factor productivity that occurs, and that produces output in the future. So one thing I really want to emphasize is that here investment, this is not financial investment. This is investment in plant and equipment. It also includes housing, new housing, and any accumulation of unsold goods, which are inventories that firms have. The other thing that is worth emphasizing, there is a fundamental trade-off that will occur in this model, not necessarily that the firm sees, but happens in equilibrium, which is that if you have higher investment today, higher investment requires lower consumption, given the level of output in the economy. So we'll see how that trade-off shows up when we go to the equilibrium. The trade-off that the firm sees is that if it invests more today, then it foregoes profits today. And by taking fewer profits today, they can enhance their capital stock and be able to produce more in the future. This is the intertemporal trade-off that the firm faces. Now, this law of motion for capital should look very familiar. It's exactly the law of motion that we used in the Solow growth model. And what it says is you take the capital stock that does not depreciate, and do it the new capital, which is investment, and you get the capital that you can use to produce goods in the future. Now, this model only lasts 2 periods, and so what we're going to assume is that at the end of the second period, the future period, when the firm has undepreciated capital of this amount, 1 minus delta times KF, the firm just doesn't have any use for this, and so it just liquidates it, and it becomes part of future profit. Okay? So this capital isn't just thrown in the ocean, but it just becomes part of the firm's profit. Okay, so what is the firm going to do? Well, it produces output that is in units of consumption goods. It hires labor. The wage rate is given. It makes an investment decision. And as I said, that investment decision is a cost to the firm because they're foregoing profits. So the firm's profits today are that they produce this quantity of goods, they pay their workers W times N, and then they spend this quantity of goods on investment, which they can then use to produce goods in the future. And then profits in the future are, well, they produce this quantity of goods in the future. This is the wage bill in the future. And then, as I said before, this is the liquidation value of the old capital. Now, this firm is going to be maximizing profits, But because the firm now lasts for 2 periods, it's going to maximize the present value of profits, or to word it differently, the present value of dividends. And that's what appears in equation 10. Firm is going to choose labor today, labor in the future, and investment in order to maximize this object, which is the present value of profits. As before, the firm is going to hire labor both today and in the future up to the point where the marginal product is equal to the wage. This firm is behaving competitively, and therefore it's going to take this wage as given, and it'll vary the quantity of labor that it demands in order to satisfy this relationship. So as before, we're going to get that the demand for labor is the marginal product of labor. And we can write demand for labor today as a downward sloping function of the real wage. And it's going to be affected by what happens to TFP today and what level of capital is today. So if we plot now with the real wage up here on the vertical axis and employment on the horizontal axis, we get this downward sloping demand for labor. So that is just the marginal product of labor. And if either TFP goes up or they start with a higher level of capital, then every unit of labor is going to be more productive, and therefore the demand for labor is going to shift out.